My dear friends, when I was a child, I used to hear a very popular saying in my village, and that was धरती पर इंसान, आसमान में भगवान and पाताल में शैतान. So in this video we are going to learn about this patal. That is the topic that we are going to deal with is patal. This is all about patal or patal lok. That is, when I was a child, or anyone who is a child, or anyone as a person, they can easily see what is above the surface of the earth. In the sky they can look into, they can clearly observe stars in the night, they can clearly see moons, they can clearly see sun. What about the patal? What about this patal lok? What about the interior of this earth? So in this chapter we are going to learn about what actually is inside this patal lok, or this interior of the earth. So the chapter that we are going to read, that we are going to deal with, is the inside of our earth. In this chapter, first we will look into this inside our earth, the crust, mantle, the core, and then we will be looking into a very small topic, that is minerals and rocks. So let's start this chapter without delaying. Okay, so first thing, what is inside our earth? So when we say inside our earth, suppose this is our earth, right? This is our earth, and we suppose we stand here, we stand as a human being, we suppose we stand here, and the gravitational pull is there, which is always inside, which is always pulling anything that is on the surface of the earth towards the earth. And then there is a thin layer of gases that is called atmosphere, and then if you go above it, there are celestial bodies and the Milky Way galaxy. Some of them can be observed very easily. For example, sun we can see very easily. Then the earth's own satellite, that is moon, you can easily observe that. But when we talk about the interior of the earth, we cannot simply look into this interior of the earth and say, oh, this is the interior of the earth. No, that we can't do. So after various studies, after various surveys of the volcanic eruptions that were taking place, and of course after various technological advancements, we were able to understand the interior structure of the earth. And now we have there is a consensus among all the scientists or the geographists that yes, there are three main parts that we can say constitutes the interior of the earth. Three main parts of earth's interior. Okay, there are three main parts. And what are these three main parts? The first is the crust, which is the uppermost. What is crust? This is the uppermost solid part. Okay, this is the uppermost solid part of the earth's surface. Okay, then we have second part, that is mantle. Okay, and then we have the third part, that is core. Now we will be look into all these three parts one by one in a great detail, not in a great detail because in subsequent classes you will again have to read this, but here we are going to have a very brief, we are going to actually I am going to briefly introduce all these three parts in this diagram here, right? Forget this G. Suppose this is the center. Okay, this is the center, the innermost part of the earth, and then there is another layer here, then there is this layer. Okay, so now when we talk about this crust part, this is the crust part, the thinnest part that you can see, this is the crust part. Okay, and this part that you can see from here to here, this is called mantle part. Okay, and then we have the core, which is this inner core is actually solid and this outer core is liquid. Okay, so from here to here, this part is actually core, right? So this was a brief trail, I will say this was a brief introduction of these three parts of the earth. Now we will look into each of these parts one by one. Okay, this diagram is very much important. I would like to you drawing this diagram on your copy if you are looking into this video. Okay, because this will give you a type of clarity in your mind, right? So let's begin with the crust part. Now when we say the crust part of the earth, we have already written it. This is the uppermost solid part of the earth's surface, right? This crust, you know, when we stand on the uppermost part of the earth, we have the soil that is on which we grow, you know, crops. Then there is also some water bodies there in which many marine animals live. Okay, so when we talk about this crust part, when we talk about crust, if in a one line we have to explain crust, so it is the uppermost, so this can be termed as the uppermost solid part, uppermost solid part of the earth's surface, right? The uppermost solid part of the earth's surface, this is crust. But as a human or as a human being, if you stand on earth, there is this land, then there is also water. Suppose this boy is standing in a coastal area and this is the land part, then there is also the oceanic part. This is the oceanic part. So this part which is the land part is called the continental part, and this part I have to represent it with a different color. This part is basically the oceanic part. Okay, this is the oceanic part and this part is the continental part. Now the crust is something which provides support to all these two parts. Okay, so there is a continental part of the crust and there is an oceanic part of the crust. Now what does it mean? Now when you stand on the ground, there are many hundreds of kilometers of solid structure that is beneath your feet. If you are standing on a continental or if you are standing on continent, right, on means some soil surface. Now when you go into the ocean, there is water and water everywhere, but this water also stands on some solid part, on some solid surface, and this surface is also a part of crust. But this oceanic part or this oceanic crust is thin in comparison to the continental part. So here we will have to distinguish these two parts, that is the continental crust that we have, and then we have the oceanic crust. Okay, so as a boy, this boy is standing on land, so of course suppose after this area mantle starts. So this figure is becoming a little hazy, so let me clear this so that I can make you understand it more easily. Okay, so this boy is standing on this continental part of the earth, right? This continental part of the earth, and here is oceanic part. And suppose this solid surface that we have, after this there is beginning of mantle part. here is the beginning of mantle part. So up to this there is crust, and as you can see this continental part is very much thicker, and this continental part is very much thinner vis-a-vis this part. So when we compare this continental part and this oceanic part, you can easily understand, you can easily see that oceanic part is much thinner in comparison to this land part or the continental part. So the first point that we are going to make here is that continental part is thicker. This continental part is thicker. Average, if you will see average depth of this continental crust is 35 kilometer. Okay, it makes 10 to 50 kilometer also if there is mountain. Suppose there is a mountain here, so this will add up in this width of this crust. And when we talk about oceanic crust, it is 5 kilometer on an average. Okay, if you see average width or the average depth of this oceanic crust, you will find that this is 5 kilometer on an average. So this difference you can easily understand. Now there is also a distinction between the materials of which this continental and the oceanic crust is made up of. Basically this continental crust is made up of two basic elements or two chief elements, two predominant elements that we call silicon and aluminium. This silicon and this aluminium, this together is called sial. That is why continental crust is also called a sial. Okay, and this oceanic crust is made up of two important elements, that is called silicon and magnesium. Okay, so this silicon, this magnesium, so that is why it is called CIMA layer. This is called CIMA and this is called sial, because of the elements that chiefly it is made up of. Okay, now when we talk about the thickness of these two parts, that is continental crust part and the oceanic crust part, you will be amazed to know that this oceanic crust is very much denser than this part. Okay, you know the denser things tend to, if you put an iron ball into this water, this iron will tend to sink and will ultimately settle here. Okay, but when you put on a wooden, suppose a plastic ball here, it will float on the water. Why this happens? Because the density of this plastic ball is smaller, okay, is lesser than this water, and this iron ball is denser than this water. That is why it sinks down and settles on the bottom, right? Similarly, this oceanic crust is denser when we compare it with this continental crust. If you talk about the density of the sial, that is silicon and aluminium, it is generally 3.7 gram per cubic centimeter. This is the density, and this is denser because it has approximately 4 gram per cubic centimeter of density. Okay, so in this class in 7th standard, we do not have to go into such a depth that how what will happen if oceanic crust and the continental crust interact with each other. So generally what happens that this continental crust rises up and this oceanic crust dwells down. But in this video we are not going to talk about that, because in subsequent classes, particularly in class 11th and 12th, you will be reading this in a very great detail, right? So these are two basic differences that is between continental crust and the oceanic crust, right? Okay, so moving forward, we are now going to talk about the mantle part of the earth, right? So now when we talk about mantle part, obviously this mantle is inside this crust part or beneath this crust part, that is the crustal part is simply floating on the this mantle part, right? So when we talk about the mental part of the earth's structure, let's see what happens. So when we see mantle, this is you can subdivide this mantle part. Okay, this is your crust, this is suppose your crust, this is the oceanic water here, and then we have mantle, which is actually very thick, very thick, 3500 kilometer approximately, 3500 kilometer. Okay, you can see this was just 35 kilometer, this was just 5 kilometer on an average, and this is 3500 kilometer. You can't imagine this height, right? We do not usually come across this type of dimensions. So this is the mantle part. Now when we talk about mantle part, a very thin layer in this mantle part is called the asthenosphere. There is a very thin uppermost part, astheno, there is asthenosphere. This is the uppermost part of the mantle. Okay, and this astheno means weak, meaning this is a weak layer of mantle, and basically this is in molten state, molten or semi-solid state. And what you see when you come across a news about volcano, you see volcanoes flowing like a very semi-solid type of substance. This flow, this flow of magma, this flow of lava that you see is basically this part of the asthenosphere that comes out on the surface of the earth whenever it gets a chance. So suppose if, because the crust is somehow not so strong that it can all time oppose this asthenosphere or this is basically called magma. This is called actually magma. Okay, and when it somehow breaks into this crust, it comes out on the surface flowing like water, and this is called lava. Okay, so what we see in the volcano, that red thing, is basically lava, and that was contained in the asthenospheric part of this mantle. Now when we talk about mantle is very thick. This is 3500 kilometer, and the asthenosphere part is in molten state. Now this is denser. First thing is that this is denser than crust. Obviously it will be denser than crust, that is why it is lying beneath this crust. Okay, and this mantle covers 84% of total volume of Earth's surface. Total volume of Earth's right. This constitutes of 84% of the total volume of Earth. Means the majority part, not majority, the substantial part is this mantle. Okay. And I forgotten one thing, the crust consists of only one part, only 1% of total volume of the earth. Only 1%. You can, because you can see only 35 kilometer is the average that we have of the continental crust, and then 5 kilometer of the oceanic crust. So that is not very much. So that is why 1% of the volume of the earth is constituted by the crust, and the mantle consists of 84% of total volume of earth. This is the basic distinction that we have. Okay, now then we have another part that is called core. Okay, this is core. So this is your, suppose this is your crust, this is your mantle, and then there is an outer core which is actually liquid, and then there is solid part of core. So this area is core, CORE, core. This core constitutes of 14% of the total volume of the earth, right? Total volume of the earth, it constitutes 14%. And two substances it is made up of, that is nickel, almost more than 80%, and then there is iron, which is the rest part. So that is why it is called iron, we denote as Fe, ferrous. So that is why it is called Ni-Fe, that is Ni-Fe. So that is why it is called Ni-Fe layer. Maximum portion is nickel, and then there is iron. And you know, nickel and iron are both heavier elements. That is why core is the most dense part of this earth's surface. Now when we talk about this core, this is in liquid and this is in solid. Why does it happen? Why does it happen? There is simple reason for this, because if you see the core part of the earth, the inner core is solid and the outer core is liquid. How it is possible that the inner core is solid? In fact, the temperature at the inner core is higher than the outer core. Despite the higher temperature and higher pressure, this remains in solid. This is a very simple logic behind this, and that simple logic is that you know that any solid who has to expand, suppose this solid has to expand, what it has to do is that the intermolecular space that is there, it has to break or it has to expand, but here pressure is so much that it is unable to expand, that the intermolecular space remains what we call, it remains compact, it doesn't change because of the extreme amount of pressure that is there. That is why despite having higher temperature than the outer core, it remains in solid. Okay, so these were the three different structure of the earth: the crust, mantle and the core, right? Now moving to the, if you draw a little comparison between the crust, the mantle and the core, you can very simply compare their densities. You can simply compare their width that we have on, and you can also compare the percentage by volume of the earth that they consist of, right? For example, if we compare crust, mantle and core, we can simply write that this mantle consists of 84% of total volume of earth. Total volume of earth, 84%. It consists of just 1% of total volume of earth, and this consists of almost 15% of total volume of earth. So our first difference is this. If we talk about density, of course core is much denser than mantle, and then it is much denser than the crust part. In crust also, Sima is much denser than Cr, that is oceanic crust is denser than the continental crust. Then if we talk about the thickness, so core average thickness, this crust, if we take about crust, average thickness of the crust is 30 kilometer on an average. You can see mantle 3500 kilometer, and this is 2900 kilometer approximately. If you will add all these three, you will get that the radius of earth, you will find that it is approximately 6300 kilometer. On much round, if you round it again, it will be approximately 6000 kilometer. We as human beings have not been able to go beyond 4 kilometer. So up to depth, the most depth up to which we have gone is up to 4 kilometer, a mine in South Africa. The scientists and engineers were trying to find out oil, and in search of oil they went up to 4 kilometer inside the earth. Okay, so this is the deepest point that up to which human you can say attempt has reached, and the earth is 6000 kilometer. There is no comparison, right? So these are the three basic differences that we have between crust, mantle and core, right? Crust is also brittle in nature, right? Brittle, that is why the magma comes out, right? So this was the basic of the interior of the earth, or the Patal Lok. Now moving on to our next topic, which is a very short topic, that is about the minerals and the rocks. Okay, so when we talk about minerals and rocks, we know that the earth's surface is made up of different types of rocks, and within these rocks we have minerals. Okay, so let's begin with minerals and the rocks. Now first thing first, what is mineral? So when we talk about mineral are naturally occurring substances, naturally occurring inorganic substances these are naturally occurring inorganic substances, okay, having definite chemical composition, and atomic arrangements. Three keywords here. First, these are naturally occurring. Then there are inorganic substances. What does it mean by inorganic substances? Means they do not contain carbon. And when we say carbon is basically mainly derived from plants or animals, that is living biotic component of the earth. So these are inorganic substances, meaning they have their own existence. Okay, they were never present in a life form, right? They are inorganic substances, and they also have definite chemical composition and atomic arrangement, right? So these are the things you have to understand. First, they are naturally occurring, then they are inorganic, then they have definite chemical and atomic arrangement. Okay, and when we talk about rocks are basically an aggregate of minerals. They are basically an aggregate of minerals having property of all the constituent minerals. So rocks are basically aggregate of minerals. This is something which you have to understand. They are aggregate of minerals, means many minerals have combined together to form a rock. And this rock, which is composed of many minerals, will show the properties of the minerals that it constitutes of, right? So rocks are basically aggregate of minerals which show the property of all the constituent minerals, right? Now here we have to go into some detail about rocks. For example, what are the type of rocks? Okay, and then within this type of rocks we have to understand about subtype. For example, the igneous rocks, they are intrusive and extrusive, they are plutonic. Okay, so we will be understanding all these types of rocks. So we have already dealt with the definition of rocks. Now we will be studying the types of rocks. So when we talk about the types of rocks, the first type is the igneous rocks. Then we have the sedimentary rocks. Then we have the metamorphic rocks. Okay. Igneous rocks are also called as primary rocks. And why are they called primary rocks? Because these are the rocks from which this sedimentary and this metamorphic has formed. This is the rock which forms the base for all these two rocks. Okay, this is formed directly from magma. Directly formed from magma of mantle portion, or the more specifically the asthenosphere. Sedimentary rocks are formed from sediments deposition. These are formed from sediments deposition. And metamorphic rocks are formed when the igneous and the sedimentary rocks undergoes recrystallization under high temperature and pressure. This is T, this is P. T stands for temperature and P stands for pressure. So what I mean to say is this igneous rocks is formed when magma gets solidified. And this magma can get solidified either within the earth's surface. For example, this was the magma which wanted to come onto the ground, but it was unsuccessful in breaking this crust. So when it approaches towards the crustal part, it basically became cooler, and because of cooling it solidifies. We know that magma is in molten state. Now when it becomes cooler, it gets solidifies, and it's because of this solidification it becomes rocks within the surface of the earth. It acquires a shape within this earth's surface, and such type of rocks are called plutonic rocks. Plutonic rocks, or the intrusive rocks. Intrusive rocks, meaning they settled or they get formed within the earth's surface. They were not able to break the crust. Okay, now when this magma, suppose somehow, is able to break this crust part, then it comes onto the ground, and when it comes onto the ground, the temperature is getting decreased. So this cooling of the magma results into this solidification, and such rocks that gets formed after coming onto the surface of the earth is called extrusive rocks. Extrusive rocks. So two type of rocks that we have to study: igneous. First is the intrusive rocks or the plutonic rocks, and then there is extrusive rocks. Intrusive means those rocks which get solidified within the earth's surface, and then we have this extrusive rocks which were able to, this magma was able to break the crust, and then after breaking the crust, when it reaches to the earth's surface, it gets solidified, it gets cooled and gets into, they get some sort of solidified structure, and this solidified structure is called extrusive rock. Both intrusive and extrusive are both igneous rocks, they are primary rocks. Now what happens after so many years, suppose thousands of years, the rocks start, suppose this igneous rocks was formed on the surface of the earth. After so many years, when water falls on it, when winds hit it, and when many chemical reactions, this rocks tend to break up, okay, and it will break into smaller pieces, okay, then will again it break, and again it will be like smaller pieces. Now this wind or water carries these smaller particles up to a very great distance, and this get deposited layer by layer somewhere. This deposition, after so many years, this deposition, after some amount of pressure, it gets solidified again, and it acquires another shape. It acquires a shape of another rock, and that rock is called sedimentary rock. Well, these smaller particles, that broken particles, were called sediments. This deposited layer by layer is called sediment. But after these sediments one by one get deposited, when it solidifies, it forms the sedimentary rock. Now somehow, suppose this igneous rock that was formed on the earth's surface, the sedimentary rock that was formed on the earth's surface, for example, there is an earthquake and the crust gets deformed and it dwells down both these rocks. Now beneath the earth's surface there are a huge amount of temperature and pressure. So because of high temperature and pressure, it goes recrystallization. That is, the internal structure of these rocks will be redefined, and this redefined form of rock is what we call the metamorphic rocks. So this recrystallization form word is very important. High temperature and pressure is very important. Okay. So these are the three types of rocks that we have to study here. Now there is another a very small topic that we have to study, is rock cycle. Now what is this rock cycle? We have already dealt that igneous rock is the primary rock, and when it is broken into small parts, that it encounters weathering process and then deposition, it forms sedimentary rocks. And now this sedimentary rock, if suppose it comes in the contact of lava, it will melt down and again form the igneous rocks. And now both these igneous and sedimentary rocks, when subjected to a very great amount of temperature and pressure, this will form metamorphic rock. So this is rock cycle. I am not able to make a clear diagram here, so I will try it here, okay, so that you can understand it very easily. Okay, so suppose this is igneous rock, this is suppose sedimentary rocks, and this is suppose metamorphic rocks. This is suppose metamorphic rocks. What happens? This igneous is subjected to weathering and deposition, and that is why it forms sedimentary rocks. This sedimentary is subject to recrystallization under high pressure and temperature, and same is with this also, and it forms metamorphic rock. Now this metamorphic rock can also be subject to this weathering and deposition, forming sedimentary rocks. Okay, and this sedimentary rocks, if it somehow enters into the earth's or comes in contact with the earth's magma, it will again form igneous rocks. Okay, so this is the rock cycle that we have. Metamorphic can turn into weathering and decomposition. Sedimentary can become recrystallization after metamorphing, and igneous will also, after recrystallization under very high temperature and pressure, can again become this metamorphic rock. So this was the total of this chapter that we have had in this chapter to study about two basic concepts, the interior and the rocks and the minerals. Then there was a brief topic about rock cycle. I have comprehensively covered this chapter, and I hope I was able to make you understand each and every topic in a very minute detail. Now, after going through the exercise of this chapter, I am 100% sure you are not going to face any difficulty in solving those questions. But despite that, if you face any sort of difficulty in finding the answers to those questions, you can feel free to comment on the comment box, and then wherever and whenever I will get chance, I will be there to answer your query. So this is all about in this Patal Lok. Okay, thank you very much for joining this video. Hope you are doing very well. Thank you.